Chapter 1269, Unable to Enjoy. 1. Black flame worms were not considered rare in the central mainland, but after the undead clan came to the central mainland, the black flame worm became extremely scarce over time. Currently, a black flame worm could be said to be priceless and hard to come by to the undead clan. It was exactly because of this fact that Minggu would present this precious treasure to Yi Qingtang. However, Yi Qingtang's stomach churned as she looked at that black, fleshy worm. How could she forget the undead clan's exquisite taste? Yow. Minggu's pitch-dark orbs seemed to be filled with countless stars that sparkled brilliantly as he looked at Yi Qingtang expectantly like a little puppy waiting to be praised. Yi Qingtang tried her best to keep the smile on her face, though she was losing it on the inside. Seeing this sight, the little white tiger turned its back extremely disloyally and muffled a snicker with its paws. Ah yow, although this black flame worm is not as juicy as those you ate before, it still tastes pretty nice. Are you dissatisfied that it is not big enough? The light in Minggu's eyes gradually faded when he saw that Yi Qingtang had not eaten it after some time. Was this not big enough? Looking at the black flame worm that was several inches bigger than a roasted suckling pig, Yi Qingtang was more than speechless. Exactly what kind of taste did the Holy Lord of Shadows have that she could actually eat such a thing? I am just very touched. Yi Qingtang summoned her might to suppress the urge to gag, and she beamed at Minggu. There are not many black flame worms now, but you still took the trouble to find it for me. Hearing that, Minggu's eyes lit up instantly, and he smiled adorably. As long as it's something that you like, I will find it for you. Seeming to have thought something, Minggu placed the black flame worm on the ground, took out a necklace that was chained with golden skulls, and presented it to Yi Qingtang. Ah yow, this is a necklace that I chained for you. I am giving it to you. Minggu placed the necklace before Yi Qingtang bashfully. Yi Qingtang experienced complicated feelings when she saw that accessory, which was chained up using golden painted skulls. How exactly was she going to accept the undead clan's sense of aesthetics? However, compared to eating worms, this necklace had greater acceptability to Yi Qingtang. As long as it was not eating worms, she was willing to do anything else. Yi Qingtang received the necklace and wore it, causing Minggu to smile even brighter. At the same time, Yi Qingtang saw that black flame worm with a strong will to live was attempting to wriggle away, and a wave of relief washed over her. However, a loud bang was heard. A black light flashed across from Minggu's hand and immediately struck the route that the black flame worm was heading toward. The black flame worm, startled by the loud sound, rolled on the ground, and its fleshy body trembled. It almost ran away. Minggu ran toward the black flame worm, picked it up, and placed it before Yi Qingtang. His large, sparkling eyes were filled with expectancy as he looked at Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang's lips twitched a little. Was she unable to avoid this today? Currently, only a handful of the undead clan fully believed her identity as the Holy Lord of Shadows without a doubt, and one of them was Minggu. If she caused Minggu to have any suspicions, Yi Qingtang took a deep breath secretly and smiled. Let's eat it together. Wasn't it just eating a worm? So be it. Minggu looked as though he was overwhelmed by an unexpected favor. Without waiting for Yi Qingtang to say anything else, he immediately carried a stool over, slammed the black flame worm on the table, and sat in his seat obediently. Chapter 1270, Unable to Enjoy. 2. Yi Qingtang had a breakdown on the inside but dared not show it. She even had the thought of dying as she looked at the plump, succulent black flame worm. How exactly should this be eaten? Should she put it into her mouth directly? Looking at that fleshy black flame worm that was still wriggling about, Yi Qingtang felt that she was still not mentally strong enough to reach that stage. She could not eat it. Minggu did not sense Yi Qingtang's internal breakdown and obediently took out a dagger. Afterward, he sliced a piece of the black flame worm's gray flesh and handed it to Enchanting. Taking a look at the worm flesh that was still dripping with pus and then at the black flame worm, which was trembling from the pain, Enchanting's heart was in crumbles. What the heck? It's really eaten raw. Let's eat it together. Holding back the urge to puke, Enchanting took the worm flesh, mustered her courage, and took a bite. Fluid exploded in her mouth instantly with a bite. The disgusting taste of the carrion-like flesh rushed throughout her body. God knows how much energy Enchanting exerted to stop herself from puking. In contrast, Minggu dug in blissfully after seeing that Enchanting took a bite. Humans and the undead clan had a world of differences in their taste for food. As Enchanting ate miserably, she realized that the heartless little white tiger was actually back-facing her and trembling continuously. Don't think that she doesn't know it is suppressing its laughter. With the thought of all for one, one for all, Enchanting pulled the little white tiger over and stuffed a half-eaten piece of flesh into its mouth before it could react. In just a moment, the little white tiger that had been gloating over her misfortune immediately rolled its eyes. Does it still dare to be cocky? Seeing that Enchanting shared such a precious black flame worm with that darn white tiger, Minggu's eyes turned murderous. The little white tiger was almost disgusted to death, yet it noticed that Minggu was glaring at it as though it wanted to devour it. Fuck you. It's not like I ate it willingly. Ah yow, is it tasty? Minggu looked at Enchanting obediently while secretly swearing to find a chance to kill this little white tiger that was fighting for her favor with him. How can something that you searched so hard for not be tasty? Enchanting smiled affectionately even though she was crying on the inside. Since it's tasty, you should eat more. As though he was greatly encouraged, Minggu could not even be bothered with eating and hurriedly began slicing pieces of worm flesh for Enchanting. That fleshy black flame worm was cut into many pieces and was killed in the blink of an eye. As Enchanting pitted the black flame worm, she pitted herself too. When will this be over? Just by looking at Enchanting eat, Minggu was extremely content and specially slowed down his eating pace so as to leave more for Enchanting. Ah yow, how much longer are you going to stay like this? Minggu asked suddenly. Enchanting was slightly taken aback. However, Minggu looked up, propped his chin on his hands, and watched Enchanting eat the worm flesh. Ah yow, previously, you said that it is easier for us to move around with a human appearance but… Ah yow, humans are really too hideous. Ah yow, you're clearly so beautiful. Why must you force yourself to have this hideous look? Minggu puckered his lips as regret filled his face. Hi, Deus. Enchanting stared blankly. Chapter 1271, Unable to Enjoy, 3. Although Enchanting did not care for looks, her face could be considered to be the standard of great beauty among humans. Why did it become hideous when Minggu spoke about it? Ah yow, will you change back? You're clearly so beautiful. With a sincere look, Minggu specially took out a scroll and opened it before Enchanting. The scroll revealed a drawing of a gray skeleton frame. While it was donned in an elegant dress and had a golden crown on its head, it was remarkably similar to a skeleton. Ah yow, look how beautiful you were last time. You were the top beauty of our skeleton tribe back then. But look at you now. Why must you do this to yourself? An expression of despair was etched all over Minggu's face as though Enchanting's look on the Holy Lord of Shadows was the biggest humiliation. Enchanting was silent. The undead clan's taste was mostly similar to any other species. In the eyes of the skeleton tribe, the skeleton form was naturally the most beautiful. In their eyes, the slender skeleton frame and pitch-black eye sockets were deemed as beautiful. In contrast, a whole body of skin that covered the skeleton frame was nothing but hideous. Thus, had she always been too hideous to look to the undead clan? Enchanting felt that she was about to turn numb from the verbal attack. "Ah Yao, we are in the temple now anyways. Will you return to your original look?" Minggu tried his best to persuade Enchanting to return to being the most beautiful woman of the skeleton tribe. Enchanting smiled lovingly but did not reply. She could not do it. She finally saw that while Minggu was fully convinced of her identity, this posed a huge problem as well. It was exactly because he trusted her so much that he treated her with the rules of the undead clan, causing Enchanting, a human, to have an eye-opener. Minggu still planned to persuade Enchanting to be herself, but Xuefu suddenly came over and said that Ming Wang was looking for him. Upon hearing that, Minggu could only look at Enchanting reluctantly and leave very unwillingly. After leaving the sleeping chamber, Minggu spoke to Xuefu. "Xuefu, bring those flower pots of mine to Yao later. Yao loves them the most." A gasp of laughter escaped Xuefu's lips as he looked at Minggu, who prioritized Enchanting for everything. "You raised those flowers for thousands of years. You must have been waiting for this moment, right?" Minggu nodded his head and said, "Before Yao left back then, I accidentally broke a few flower pots, and I thought of growing better ones to compensate her. This wait turned out to be thousands of years." Xuefu shook his head in laughter and subsequently sent those few flower pots that Minggu mentioned to Enchanting's sleeping chambers. Enchanting immediately plunged into deep thought as she looked at the few pots of flowers that Xuefu sent in. In those flower pots, the flower stalks bent their alluring bodies of which bloody skulls were hanging from. Skull flower. Using a fresh human skull as the foundation, the newly sprouted blood vine was then to be buried into the skull. Once the blood vine grew, it would be nourished with the flesh and grow gradually. Minggu knows that you love the skull flower the most and has raised these few pots of flowers for thousands of years. He hopes that you like it, Xuefu said with a smile. "Like it? I really love it to death. Whoever it be, hurry up and get me out of this temple of shadows. Who the hell wants to have bloody skulls that wobble non-stop staring at themselves when they are sleeping? How exquisite are the tastes of the Holy Lord of Shadows exactly." Chapter 1272, Let Me Go Free. 1. Brother, are you looking for me? Minggu walked into Ming Wang's room and asked. Ming Wang's room was dim and ghastly. Emisham. Ming Wang was examining some scrolls at a desk and did not even bat an eye when he responded. While they were twins, Minggu had an inexplicable fear toward Ming Wang. "You brought the black flame worm over?" Ming Wang asked coldly without looking up. "Yeah, I brought it over." Minggu looked at Ming Wang and said, "Brother, it's rare for Yao to be back. She loves the black flame worm the most. If you wish to eat it, I will bring it to you next time. Shut up." Ming Wang suddenly looked up with a frown as he shot the innocent Minggu a cold look. "It's been so many years already. Why do you still have so much crap to say? Did I ask you so many things?" Ming Wang's voice was so cold that the air could freeze. Minggu trembled and pursed his lips, aggrieved. It had been so many years, but no matter what he did, his brother was always dissatisfied. Ming Wang frowned at Minggu with a hint of impatience. "Make preparations for a trip to the Eternal Dynasty 2 days later," Ming Wang said coldly. "I'm not going," Minggu said instinctively. Ming Wang's face turned cold immediately. However, Minggu repressed his fear and said, "Yao just returned. I want to stay with her. I am not going to the Eternal Dynasty." "Fool," Ming Wang narrowed his eyes, but he widened it again soon after. "There are some issues with our cooperation with the Eternal Dynasty. I am occupied with something and can't leave for the moment. You are not the only one going, as the Holy Lord is going too. What else do you have to say?" Minggu's eyes lit up immediately upon hearing that. Ah Yao is going too. I do not wish to repeat the same thing twice, Ming Wang said coldly. Ming Gu could not even be bothered with Ming Wang's cold attitude then. At the thought that he could interact with Yi Qingtang for a long period of time, he agreed immediately. I'll go, get lost then, Ming Wang said impatiently when he saw Ming Gu's reaction. Unconcerned, Ming Gu left in smiles. He could go on a trip with Ah Yao already. Although Ming Gu left the room, Ming Wang's furrowed brows never relaxed. Lady Ghost. A slender figure slowly emerged from the darkness. Present. Do you have any orders, Holy Sun? Bring a few hall masters along with Ming Gu 2 days later. You should be clear of what to do, Ming Wang looked at Lady Ghost and said. I understand. Lady Ghost smiled and nodded. The Holy Lord's identity is still uncertain as of now, and it is inconvenient for us to do anything although we suspect her. The third prince of the Eternal Dynasty, Ling Yan, has a demon-like intelligence, and he should be able to tell whether the Holy Lord is real or not. Ming Wang nodded in satisfaction. Lady Ghost said subsequently, it's just that, there's something I don't understand. Speak, Ming Wang said. Lady Ghost said, Holy Sun Ming Gu firmly believes the Holy Lord's identity and is extremely protective of the Holy Lord right now. Why do you want to bring Holy Sun Ming Gu along on this trip? Even an idiot could tell that Ming Gu supported Yi Qingtang fully and even had no suspicions of Yi Qingtang's identity. Ming Wang sneered. It's exactly because Ming Gu firmly believes her that I want Ming Gu to follow them. I am slow-witted. Ming Wang said, you all can clearly see Ming Gu's attitude, and so can she. If she is an impersonator, she will definitely be on her guard. However, if Ming Gu, who trusts her fully, is beside her, there is a possibility that she will lower her guard. Chapter 1273, Let Me Go Free, 2. Being alert around her will only result in her raising her guards against us, and we will not be able to find out any suspicious things about her. However, if she relaxes a little, she will definitely give something away. Lady Ghost immediately understood Ming Wang's intentions after hearing what he said. You are wise. You may leave, Ming Wang said. Lady Ghost disappeared into the darkness subsequently. Once there was no one in the room, Ming Wang stood up slowly and opened a secret compartment. In it was a lifelike portrait of a half-skeleton, half-human figure who was none other than the Holy Lord of Shadows. Ah Yao, looking at that portrait that he had kept for a long time, he frowned in misery. Yi Qingtang enjoyed a rare idol in the Temple of Shadows in the next 2 days. She was extremely thankful for the current rarity of the black flame worm. Otherwise, given Ming Gu's character, he would send some over daily. She never wanted to touch that thing for the second time in this life. Perhaps it was her misperception, but she felt that Ming Gu was in high spirits these 2 days. But before she figured out why Ming Gu was suddenly in such a good mood, she received a shocking piece of news. Eternal Dynasty. Yi Qingtang was seated on the black bone throne as she put on a reserved front that concealed her internal surprise. The cooperation with the Eternal Dynasty back then was your intention. Although you disappeared for thousands of years, the cooperation is still continuing to date. However, something happened at Eternal Dynasty's side presently, thus, we can only request you to take a look there, Ming Wang said expressionlessly, though his black orbs observed Yi Qingtang's each and every movement. Yi Qingtang's face was emotionless, but she was overwhelmed with a mix of emotions on the inside. Eternal Dynasty. Wasn't that Ling Yan's territory? Go. She would definitely go. What happened? While Yi Qingtang really wished to leave this hell of a Temple of Shadows immediately, she still had to feign a calm front. It is still unclear. Thus, we need you to go there to take a look. Ming Wang answered flawlessly. Ming Gu and Lady Ghost will go on this trip with you. They will bring you to meet with Eternal Dynasty's third prince, Ling Yan/Ming Wang added. Bring her to meet Ling Yan. Yi Qingtang was excited, but she faintly felt that things were not that simple. Although the Temple of Shadows did not test her further over the past few days, she was very clear that they would not believe her identity so easily. Logically speaking, the test would not stop. However, Ming Wang suddenly wanted her to go to the Eternal Dynasty and interact with Ling Yan. Yi Qingtang was not a fool, and she could easily guess Ming Wang's intentions after deliberating about it carefully. Most likely, Ming Wang wished to use the highly intelligent Ling Yan to test her identity. Yi Qingtang really wanted to applaud Ming Wang's wit. Good job. Holy Sun Ming Wang. I got it. When do we set off? Yi Qingtang asked while keeping her composure. The preparations are all made. You may set off any time. Ming Wang replied. There were indeed preparations from the start. It was no wonder Minggu was so spirited these few days. Yi Qingtang kept a faint smile on her face, though she was extremely elated that she was about to leave the Temple of Shadows. Once she headed to the Eternal Dynasty, with Ling Yan on her side, perhaps she could find the chance to escape the damned Temple of Shadows. Yi Qingtang was on cloud 9 just at the thought of it. Very quickly, Yi Qingtang, Minggu, and Lady Ghost, along with a group of undead clan, set off for the Eternal Dynasty. Naturally, Yi Qingtang brought the little white tiger along with her as well. Chapter 1274, Let Me Go Free. 3. The Eternal Dynasty was thousands of miles away from the Temple of Shadows. Yi Qingtang sat in a gray-bone sedan. She finally relaxed when she saw the Temple of Shadows disappear into the distance. Don't rejoice too early. Don't you see that Ming Wang has sent Lady Ghost with us? And those branch masters are no weaklings. If you're not careful, you might expose yourself and die without even reaching the Eternal Dynasty. The little white tiger poured cold water on Yi Qingtang when it saw the smile in her eyes. Yi Qingtang's good mood was immediately dampened. Of course, she knew all that. Every day she failed to escape was another day with the sword of the Temple of Shadows suspended over her head. They could pick anyone from the undead clan, and they could kill her. Yi Qingtang was very careful during the journey. The undead did not need to sleep, drink, or eat, so they seldom stopped to rest. After traveling for a few days, they were more than halfway there. The group from the Temple of Shadows stopped and rested for a while. Ah Yao, shall we look around? Minggu took the opportunity to sneak into Yi Qingtang's sedan and asked her hopefully. Yi Qingtang was unable to refuse when she looked at the puppy-like face. She would also take the opportunity to stretch her limbs. Heaven knew her bones were shattered from squatting in that bone sedan all day. The group from the Temple of Shadows had stopped at the foot of a tall mountain. Now and then, thunderous explosions could be heard from the top of the mountain, and debris also fell from it. The ghost lady walked over and said smilingly, "Is the Holy Sun Minggu and the Holy Lord going over there?" Minggu said, "Yao and I will look around, the rest of you can stay here and rest." Lady Ghost laughed and said, "I was just feeling bored. Why don't I go with you?" Minggu pouted and looked somewhat reluctant. However, Lady Ghost was Ming Wang's trusted subordinate, so he did not dare to say anything. He only lifted his eyes to look pleadingly at Yi Qingtang. Of course, Yi Qingtang knew why Lady Ghost wanted to follow them, but she did not mind, so she nodded. Lady Ghost followed them smilingly. It was nearing evening, and the mountain was littered with huge boulders. The occasional explosions hurt their eardrums. Yi Qingtang, Lady Ghost, and Minggu walked for a while before they saw a few shabby figures on the desolate mountainside. They looked emaciated and skinny. Their appearance was rather odd. Their skin was gray without the slightest hint of color. They only wore some shabby clothes. Their eyes were hollow, and their legs were heavily shackled. They were barefoot and were pulling a cart of ore with some difficulty. The undead clan, with one glance, Enchanting could tell that these drab-looking figures were part of the undead clan. However, these undead were pitiable compared to the undead clan in the Temple of Shadows. A harsh-looking foreman stood nearby. His back was bare, and he held a metal whip that he cracked from time to time, viciously whipping the undead with a clear cracking noise. A bunch of lazy bones. If you don't drag 50 carts of ore today, I will flay you. The foreman shouted as he brutally whipped a skinny undead. The force of the metal whip was so great that the bones of the undead seemed like they were about to break at any moment. The undead's face twisted in pain. It looked as if it was still quite young. Chapter 1275, Slaves. 1. Despicable worm, how dare you be rude to us undead. The moment Mingu saw this scene, a murderous look surfaced on his face. Lady Ghost, who was standing nearby, maintained her composure, but she glanced at Enchanting from the corner of her eye and spoke. Holy Sun Mingu has not left the Temple of Shadows for thousands of years. It is natural that he doesn't understand the current situation in Central Mainland. Things like that have long become common in Central Mainland. Mingu frowned slightly. Lady Ghost continued. Ever since the Holy Lord went missing thousands of years ago, the power of our Temple of Shadows has waned. The circumstances of the various undead clans in Central Mainland have also changed completely. The undead clan was not native to Central Mainland. It was only when the Holy Lord of Shadows and the tribe leaders of the undead clans had come to Central Mainland that many undead moved here from the second domain and settled down. When the Temple of Shadows was at the height of its powers, the undead had smoothly settled into life in this mainland. The natives did not dare to offend the undead because of the power of the Temple of Shadows. However, when the Holy Lord of Shadows went missing and the Temple of Shadows declined, the situation changed. Shortly after the Holy Lord of Shadows disappeared, the mainland still had some scruples. But as time went by and 1,000 years passed, everyone's fear of the Holy Lord of Shadows and the Temple of Shadows slowly dissipated. With that, the undead clan's position became increasingly precarious. The special characteristics of their race were that they did not need to eat, drink, or sleep. Many thought of them as the cheapest form of labor. 1,000 years ago, people in Central Mainland began to capture the undead that had settled there. They enslaved the undead because of their special characteristics, and the latter became the lowest form of labor. As slaves, the status of the undead was lower than that of anyone else. They did not age or die. Unless they met with some accident or with extenuating circumstances, they could be endlessly oppressed. The mountain that Enchanting and the others were on was a mine. There were innumerable mine shafts, each filled with undead who worked day and night. But they did not receive any remuneration. They did not even receive the cheapest food and housing that the human slaves did. They were, at most, allowed to rest for a few minutes when they were utterly exhausted. Otherwise, they worked day and night. How dare a smelly worm like you act so audaciously? Mingu's face grew stern. Ever since the Holy Lord of Shadows had vanished, he had not left the Temple of Shadows at all. Naturally, he remained ignorant of the changes in this mainland that had taken place over the past thousands of years. In his eyes, humans were weak and ugly like smelly grubs. He would never have imagined that today's circumstances were possible. Holy Sun Mingu, don't be angry. The situation you see today is common in Central Mainland. Lady Ghost pacified Mingu, but from the corner of her eye, she continued to pay close attention to Enchanting's every move. Enchanting's emotions were in turmoil as she looked at these abused undead, but she did not show it. When she had come to Central Mainland in her previous life, she had learned a little of the terrible circumstances of the undead here. The undead neither aged nor died. They did not eat or drink. To many, they were the perfect slaves. 1,000 years ago, humans had begun to capture them in large numbers and force them to work for humans. Chapter 1276, Slaves, 2. Although Enchanting disliked these things, she had been hard-pressed to survive in her previous life, much less bother with other people's troubles. But now, Enchanting vaguely sensed that Lady Ghost was secretly observing her reaction when she talked to Minggu. Enchanting's lips curved in a small smile. Outside the mine, the small undead who was being whipped had broken a bone, and he was writhing on the ground in pain. Lazy bones, you still want to play dead. When the foreman saw this, he did not show any guilt. Instead, he advanced with large strides and stepped on the little undead with an ugly expression on his face. Get up. If you continue to laze around, I will break all your bones. He shouted and berated them. He did not treat them with a shred of dignity, dealing with them like lowly insects. The other undead looked on in terror. They were used to the abuse and the scoldings. Even if they wanted to help, they knew that this would ultimately result in the small undead suffering even more. They had lived happily in Central Mainland for generations. They had not expected that they would one day be relegated to this state. Please, please, don't beat me. It hurts so much. The small undead tried to protect himself in terror. His scrawny frame quivered as he was kicked and punched mercilessly. How dare you talk back? I'll kill you. The foreman did not show any pity. He raised the metal whip in his hand again and fiercely whipped the small undead. There was a huge bang. The metal whip did not land on the small undead's body as expected. The small undead raised his eyes in shock but realized that the foreman who was whipping him had been flung straight into a nearby boulder. A large patch of blood seeped from his mouth and nose. Everyone was stunned. Damn it, who dared to hit me? The foreman's whole body was in agony. He forced himself to stand up and suddenly saw the person who had struck him. He saw a beautiful young girl smiling at him. Who are you? How dare you hit me? The foreman shouted. All the other foremen in the surrounding mine shafts were summoned by the sound of his yelling. Where are these undead from? How dare they make trouble in our long family's territory? The foreman who had hurried over soon realized that something was amiss. The young girl looked quite ordinary, but the child standing behind her, with his completely pitch-black eyes, was emanating an aura of death. The seductive-looking lattice eyes were different from humans, and she was radiating an even more intense death aura. The foreman who had enslaved the undead immediately saw that the child and the seductive-looking woman were undead. At that moment, Lady Ghost and Minggu were looking at Enchanting. They had not expected Enchanting to suddenly act. A trace of a smile hung on Enchanting's lips. She looked at the shouting foreman with a cold look in her eyes. What's going on? An impatient shout suddenly rang out from a nearby mine shaft. A luxuriously dressed youth with an oily face walked towards the disturbance. When the foreman saw the youth walk over, they immediately went over fawningly. Chapter 1277, Slaves, 3, Young Master, these undead appeared from nowhere and dared to strike us. A foreman hurriedly explained. An impatient look crossed the youth's face when he heard that. He raised his eyes, but what he saw caused a malicious look to instantly flash across his eyes. What beautiful undead! The youth glanced at Enchanting and Lady Ghost with an expression of surprise. This youth's name was Long Yang, and he was a cousin of the Long family master. The Long family was a famous family in this mainland. It controlled many mines and had many connections among the dynasties. The Long family had also enslaved many undead. Long Yang had seen many undead before, but this was the first time seeing such beautiful ones. The undead enslaved by the Long family received a jolt when they saw that Long Yang had arrived. A few of the undead who were near Enchanting whispered, "Clansmen, thank you for your help today. But the Long family is not to be trifled with. You'd better leave." The Long family was extremely powerful and had captured many undead. Those who tried to escape were all executed by the Long family. They were grateful to these 3 clansmen for their help, so they were unwilling to see more of their clansmen suffer at the hands of the Long family. Enchanting looked at the worried undead, and a trace of amusement surfaced in her eyes. Many undead had settled in Central Mainland. Most of them had led comfortable lives and, like the other inhabitants of the mainland, did not look for trouble. But the special characteristics of their race had caused their suffering. Enchanting did not leave. She only raised her eyes to look at the malicious-looking Long Yang. "You are certainly very bold. Do you know who controls this area? How dare you be so presumptuous?" Long Yang smiled at Enchanting and Lady Ghost with a greedy look in his eyes. "Men, capture these 3 undead. Put the small one to work. As for the 2 female undead, send them to my room. I have not had a taste of such beautiful undead." Long Yang smiled sinisterly. At Long Yang's command, the foreman and their henchmen charged at Enchanting and the others. The enslaved undead were shocked and they saw that their clansmen were about to be mistreated. They almost subconsciously blocked the men's way. An elderly undead hurriedly said to Enchanting, "Clansmen, please leave quickly. The Long family is not to be trifled with. If you are caught, there will be no hope of escape." They could not escape, but they also could not look on and see their clansmen, who had helped them, get into trouble. A large group of undead slaves tried to intercept the men from the Long family. However, they were unarmed and only succeeded in bringing on a whipping. Tragic screams rang out. Enchanting's eyes immediately turned icy. These humans in Central Mainland all looked down on the undead clan. They thought that the undead clan was cruel and cold-blooded, but they did not see that the ties between the undead and their clansmen were no less than that of the other races. "Minggu," Enchanting said softly while remaining expressionless. The moment Enchanting spoke, Minggu, who was already feeling fed up, immediately transformed into a black shadow. Chapter 1278, Shock 1. No one saw what happened, they only sensed an aura of death encircling them. The foremen who had been brandishing their metal whips and beating the undead only saw a black blur. They collapsed to the ground before they knew what was happening. The bodies on the ground were all sucked dry of their blood. Their bones were wrapped in dried and cracked skin while their eyes bulged out in death. The blood from these smelly grubs is really nauseating. Minggu's figure suddenly appeared before the undead. The sharp nails on his small white hands were covered with fresh blood that dripped around his feet. "You despicable grubs, how dare you be discourteous to Yao? You really deserve to die." Minggu's usually innocent and smiling visage had completely disappeared and was replaced with the bone-chilling murderous air similar to that of Ming Wang. Everyone from the Long family was stunned when the small undead suddenly struck. They stared in shock at the dozens of bloodless corpses that littered the ground. Dozens of men had been killed by this small undead in the blink of an eye. A trace of shock involuntarily surfaced on Long Yang's face, but he quickly recovered. "I've changed my mind. Little undead, you're rather special. Don't worry, I won't leave you in the mines. I'll bring you to the arenas instead. You will certainly make a lot of money for me." Long Yang narrowed his eyes that were filled with greed. Long Yang ordered the guards behind him to charge forward and capture Minggu. Minggu watched coldly as they rushed towards him. His eyes were filled with contempt. He did not move, but a towering aura of death rushed out from him. The aura of death seemed to cover the entire mountain. The charging Long family guards were shrouded by the aura. It was as if they were suddenly gripped by some force. Their faces rapidly turned pale, and they fell, writhing, to the ground. It was as if someone was slowly draining the blood from their bodies, which flowed in front of Minggu and transformed into a crimson ball of blood. Enchanting felt very conflicted by the scene playing out before her eyes. Enchanting was hard-pressed to reconcile this murderous little fellow with the small, adorable creature who followed her everywhere, calling her Yao. She could only say, the Long family was truly unlucky. They actually wanted to capture Minggu and bring him to some arena. Wasn't that a death wish? Enchanting inwardly mourned for the Long family, but she continued to smile faintly. Long Yang had not expected this tiny undead to be so powerful. His subordinates could not even touch the corner of his robe. The undead were also shocked. They widened their eyes and looked at the powerful Minggu. A faint ray of hope appeared in their desperate eyes. In the blink of an eye, all the guards were dead. Like the foreman, they had been transformed into bloodless corpses. At that moment, Long Yang was rather pale. He had assumed that he could easily capture these three undead, but he had not expected things to reach this state. You, who are you? Long Yang looked at Minggu, who had sucked all the guards dry. He felt a chill permeate his body. Chapter 1279, Shock 2. Minggu had no intention of paying any attention to him. A smelly grub like that was not worth talking to. Long Yang's legs started to shake when he saw Minggu walk towards him. How dare you? This is the Long family's territory. I don't care who you are, but if you dare to offend the Long family, we will ensure that you die a terrible death in the future. Long family. Minggu cocked his head with a meditative look on his face. He had not left the Temple of Shadows for thousands of years. He had not even heard of the Long family. Lady Ghost, who was standing behind Enchanting, smiled and said, Holy Son Minggu, the Long family is one of the great families in Central Mainland. Great family? What's that? Is it something like the ancient Yu clan? Minggu asked somewhat impatiently. Long Yang's expression stiffened at Minggu's words. The ancient Yu clan, that was the supreme great family in Central Mainland. Lady Ghost laughed and shook her head. Then is it like the Jiang family? Minggu asked again. Long Yang was ashen. Jiang family. Wasn't that the domain master? This small undead mentioned the top great families in Central Mainland the moment he spoke. Although the Long family was powerful, they were not in the same class as these two great families. Just a branch from these two great families could easily crush the Long family. Who was this small undead? The more Long Yang heard, the more frightened he felt. Lady Ghost knew that Minggu's knowledge of great families was limited to the ancient Yu clan and the Jiang family, so she said, Holy Son Minggu, the Long family, how shall I put it? If the ancient Yu clan and the Jiang family are like this tree. Lady Ghost pointed to a towering tree nearby and then pointed to an ant climbing among the debris. Then that would be the Long family. So they really are smelly grubs, Minggu said with a frown. When Long Yang heard the conversation between Lady Ghost and Minggu, he felt a chill creeping towards his scalp. He had not expected the powerful Long family to be no more than a smelly grub to these undead. Young master, they are. Undead from the Temple of Shadows, a middle-aged man who was behind Long Yang blanched when he heard the conversation between Lady Ghost and Minggu. What did you say? Long Yang looked shocked. The middle-aged man gulped and said, Just now that female undead called the small undead. Ming. Holy Son Minggu. He is the Holy Son from the Temple of Shadows. Although the Temple of Shadows declined for many years, rumors of it continued to circulate in this mainland. This middle-aged man had heard legends about the Temple of Shadows, and among them had been the name of the Holy Sun, Minggu. Did you hear wrongly? Temple of Shadows. Holy Sun. Long Yang frantically looked at the middle-aged man. At that moment, he was as pale as a piece of paper. The Temple of Shadows was so powerful, it was the supreme temple that had previously dominated the entire mainland. Although it had declined for thousands of years, their long family was not comparable to them in terms of heritage. I can't be certain, the middle-aged man also panicked. If they had really encountered the Holy Sun from the Temple of Shadows, they were all doomed. But I certainly heard them address him in that way. Also, in legends, Minggu's physique is like that of a child. I think, there is no mistake. Chapter 1280, Shock 3, Long Yang only felt a chill fill his entire body. He was as frozen and shriveled as a frost-stricken plant. Although Central Mainland was now used to enslaving the undead, none of the powers would dare to offend the Temple of Shadows in the least. Even the Domain Masters Jiang clan and the ancient Yu clan would not dare to lightly provoke the Temple of Shadows. At that moment, it was not just the Long family members who had guessed Minggu's identity. The frightened undead slaves had already discovered who Minggu was. Holy Sun Minggu, it's the Temple of Shadows. It's the Great Ones from the Temple of Shadows. The undead finally saw a ray of hope. In the hearts of their clan, the Temple of Shadows would always be their sacred ground. At that moment, all the undead slaves were looking at the three great personages from the Temple of Shadows. An elderly undead received a jolt when he saw Enchanting's face clearly. The next second, the elderly undead knelt on the ground, his body quivering. He kowtowed in Enchanting's direction. Greetings. Greetings, Holy Lord. Greetings, Holy Lord of Shadows. The elderly undead's words caused everyone present to gape in shock. The Holy Lord of Shadows. Everyone's gaze converged on Enchanting, their eyes filled with disbelief. Enchanting was also shocked. After all, the Holy Lord of Shadows had been missing for thousands of years. How had this elderly undead recognized her? The elderly undead knelt humbly on the ground and worshipped her respectfully. Now that I have seen the Holy Lord, I will have no regrets even if I die. My ancestors worked for the subsidiary of the Temple of Shadows. I have had the good fortune to see the Holy Lord's picture once. Holy Lord, you have finally returned, the elderly undead spoke mournfully, his voice shaking with emotion. When the undead heard that and noted the respect that the Holy Sun Minggu had shown this lady, they realized that the beautiful young girl before them was indeed the Holy Lord of Shadows. All the undead present instantly knelt before Enchanting and prostrated themselves before her. Holy Lord! A joyous shout rang out. But when the noise entered the ears of Long Yang and the others from the Long family, it was like a death knell that foreshadowed a great calamity. Long Yang's knees turned to water, and he fell to the ground with a plop. He widened his eyes in disbelief as he looked at this charming and faintly smiling girl. He shivered uncontrollably as if he had fallen into an ice pit. Holy Lord of Shadows! How can that be? The Holy Sun Minggu had already shocked him, but he did not expect that. The Holy Lord of Shadows, who had been missing for thousands of years, was standing before him. He had even recklessly spouted nonsense just now and ordered men to send the Holy Lord of Shadows to his room. Long Yang was aghast when he thought of his words. Holy Lord! Holy Lord, the Holy Lord of Shadows, 1,000 years ago, she was the most powerful being in Central Mainland. He remembered the prosperity that the Temple of Shadows had gained under the Holy Lord of Shadows' leadership before she disappeared. Long Yang was hard-pressed to believe that the person he had offended was the Holy Lord of Shadows. Young Master, what shall we do? The others from the Long family panicked. They had offended the Holy Lord of Shadows. They were doomed. Chapter 1281, Do Me a Favor. 1. What should they do? How would he know? At that moment, Long Yang wished he could give himself 2 tight slaps. If he had known who they were, he would not have dared to provoke them under any circumstances. Now, Long Yang felt like his world was about to collapse. Holy Lord of Shadows, have mercy. I failed to recognize you and offended you. Please, Lord, have mercy and allow me to live. At that moment, Long Yang had lost all of his former smugness. He frantically kneeled on the ground and crawled over to Enchanting. He banged his head loudly on the ground as he kowtowed, hoping to save his own life. The others from the Long family also kneeled and kowtowed vigorously. Just the Holy Sun alone could kill them as easily as he could squash an ant. Now, the Holy Lord of Shadows was here in person. Long Yang was petrified. Even if the Long family master were to arrive, he would also be sweating with terror. This was the Temple of Shadows. Enchanting looked at the quivering bunch from the Long family, who were kneeling on the ground. Her eyes showed no trace of pity. Although she was neither the real Holy Lord or an undead, she had heard much about the Long family's doings in her previous life. The Long family not only enslaved the undead, but they had also gone around capturing the undead who had escaped to the mountains. The Long family would not let a single one off, no matter whether they were young or old, or what kind of character they had. They either kept them for their own use or sold them to other powers. They did not treat the undead clan with equality. To them, these innocent undead were no more than stray dogs to be used. Even the evil fighting arenas were parts of the Long family's business. They forced the undead to fight each other for entertainment. Right now, Enchanting did not mind performing the duties of the Holy Lord of Shadows. Don't leave a single one, Enchanting said calmly. Her voice rang out like a death knell. To her, race was not important. Evil people had no right to remain on this land. Minggu did not have any suspicions of Enchanting's instructions. He immediately acted. Holy Lord, have mercy. The Long family saw that death was imminent and immediately began pleading in terror. Stop! A low shout suddenly rang out. A tall figure flew over from the void and landed in front of Long Yang and the others from the Long family. Senior Duan. A look of joy flashed across Long Yang's face when he saw the man who had hurried over. A tall, stern-looking man with a sword on his back stood in front of Long Yang and the others. He frowned solemnly at the scene that met his eyes. Senior Duan, save me. Long Yang frantically crawled over and held on to the man's leg like a drowning man clutching at straws. A strange look flashed across Enchanting's eyes when she saw the man who had suddenly appeared. This man was named Duan Shirue, and he was a powerful cultivator from the Eternal Dynasty. He was so talented and powerful that he was in the same league as the 12 Saints. He was famous, and rumors said that he was upright and righteous. Who would have expected this fellow to know the Long family? Seniors, has there been some misunderstanding? Can you let them go for my sake? Duan Shirue had arrived in the area that day and happened to hear the sound of fighting. He came to take a look because he had some connections with the Long family master. Chapter 1282, Do Me a Favor. 2. Another smelly grub. Minggu looked at Duan Shirue and narrowed his eyes impatiently. Duan Shirue did not know who these undead were, but he could not ignore the matter because of his dealings with the Long family. Senior Duan, you must save me. Long Yang pleaded as if he had met his savior. Duan Shirue frowned slightly. The truth was that he was not familiar with Long Yang. However, he knew that Long Yang was a member of the Long family, so he could not ignore the situation. If they have offended you in any way, Duan Shirue, will apologize on their behalf. Please don't kill them. Duan Shirue cupped his fists and said. Minggu just looked impatient. Despicable smelly worm. Who are you to ask a Yao for a favor? Who do you think you are? Duan Shirue was famous in Central Mainland and had never been so insulted. His expression turned rather ugly, and he was about to say something. The undead who had been rescued shouted. Human, how dare you be rude to our holy lord? Holy lord. Duan Shirue was taken aback when he heard this. The only one in the undead clan who could be addressed as Holy Lord was the Holy Lord of Shadows, who had vanished thousands of years ago. Besides her, no one dared to take on this title. Duan Shirue subconsciously glanced at the young girl, who had a faint smile. Shock appeared in his eyes. Rumors had it that the Holy Lord of Shadows had disappeared for thousands of years, despicable smelly grub, who gave you permission to look at Ah Yao with your filthy eyes. When Minggu saw that Duan Shirue dared to stare at Enchanting, a murderous aura filled his eyes. He suddenly raised his hand, and a black wind blasted at Duan Shirue. Duan Shirue was fairly confident of his powers, but he was unable to avoid the blast of wind. There was a loud bang. Minggu's blow sent Duan Shirue flying. He crashed heavily into a nearby boulder, and blood suddenly spurted from his mouth. Duan Shirue, who had been thrown to the ground, was in agony. His level of cultivation gave him full confidence in his abilities. However, he had not expected this youthful-looking undead to severely injure him with just one blow. He could not possibly defend himself against this kind of ability. Duan Shirue suddenly thought of how the undead had addressed the young girl. Holy Lord, could this young girl be the Holy Lord of Shadows? Just the thought of it caused Duan Shirue to break out in a cold sweat. How bold was he to ask for a favor from the Holy Lord of Shadows? Who was he to the Holy Lord of Shadows? I have offended you. Please, Holy Lord of Shadows, forgive me. When he saw how terrible Minggu's powers were, Duan Shirue guessed the identity of the young girl who was standing next to Minggu. At that point, he did not dare to put on any airs. He even ignored the agonizing pain in his body and kneeled down frantically. His tall frame could not help but shiver. At that moment, Duan Shirue wished he could chop that stupid Long Yang into 1,000 pieces. What has Long Yang eaten to make him so ridiculously audacious? He even dared to provoke the Holy Lord of the Temple of Shadows. Enchanting had quite a good impression of Duan Shirue from her previous life and did not intend to make things difficult for him. She just said blandly, "Do you wish to defend them?" Chapter 1283, Do Me a Favor. 3. Duan Shirue naturally knew who Enchanting was referring to. He almost subconsciously shook his head like a rattle and quickly clarified. No. I don't even know them. I don't know them at all. I was only passing by, and spouted nonsense, just nonsense, Duan Shirue stuttered. He was terrified that Long Yang would say that they had some connection. Long Yang and the others thought that someone had come to save them. Now, they looked on as Duan Shirue, whom they thought of as incredibly powerful, almost would himself from the terror of the Holy Lord of Shadows. Despair filled their hearts. Senior Duan, you, shut up. What Senior Duan? I don't even know you. Don't pretend to have some connection with me. Duan Shirue was immediately enraged and even aggrieved. You brought about your own death. Don't drag me into this. Long Yang blanched as Duan Shirue scolded him. Enchanting saw that Duan Shirue knew what was good for him and said, "Get lost." Yes. I will go now. Duan Shirue did not hesitate and fled swiftly. He only wished he could grow another 2 legs so that he could flee a little faster. Everyone in the Long family lost heart when they saw their only savior abandon them. Minggu did not stand on ceremony at all. He lifted his hand and instantly snapped their necks. Blood spurted everywhere, and its thick scent spread through the air. The undead slaves who were saved all worshipped Enchanting. Holy Lord, we will never forget your kindness. Holy Lord, thank you for saving us. At that moment, the undead slaves were all greatly moved. The Holy Lord of Shadows had vanished for thousands of years. They thought that the Holy Lord despised and rejected them. But it turned out that their Holy Lord had not abandoned them. Their Holy Lord had finally returned. Lady Ghost, make arrangements for them. Enchanting's heart was conflicted when she saw the emotional undead, who were kneeling on the ground. No race should be oppressed. The power of the strong should not be used to crush the dignity of others. Lady Ghost smilingly agreed. Under Enchanting's direction, Lady Ghost ordered the guards from the Temple of Shadows, who were still resting at the same spot, to deal with the matter. They not only released the group of slaves that they had met, but they also rescued all the undead slaves from the mine shafts owned by the Long family in that mining area. Enchanting could not help but lament inwardly when she saw the shabbily dressed and pitiful-looking undead. Although she was forced to take on the role of the Holy Lord of Shadows, at least, she had done something that she wanted to. When arrangements had been made for the slaves, Enchanting continued on her journey towards the Eternal Dynasty. But a flame of hope had been lit in the hearts of the undead slaves who had been rescued. Their Holy Lord had finally returned. The Eternal Dynasty was one of the large dynasties in Central Mainland. It occupied a large area, and the entire dynasty was thriving. It was densely populated, and scenes of prosperity could be seen everywhere. But now, everything was quiet in the capital city of the Eternal Dynasty. The pedestrians all looked solemn. The lamps, which were usually brightly lit, were mostly covered with a white cloth. The palace in the Eternal Dynasty was sunk into mourning. A few princes and princesses congregated in the palace. The tragic keening of a girl could be heard in the huge hall. Her cries reverberated through the palace. Chapter 1284, The Eternal Dynasty, 1. A servant softly walked towards a slender and handsome man and whispered in his ear. The man's face was covered by a mask of sorrow, but a trace of joy secretly flashed across his eyes. He did not react and ordered the servant to leave. He sighed softly and walked over to an exquisite-looking girl, who was secretly wiping away her tears. Eldest royal sister. The man called softly as he handed her a handkerchief. The girl took the handkerchief and wiped away the tears at the corners of her eyes. Eldest royal brother. Fourth royal brother was just too pitiful. He was only 13 years old. Why, these two were the eldest prince of the Eternal Dynasty, Ling Feng, and the eldest princess, Ling Qiong. Just yesterday, the crown prince of the Eternal Dynasty, the fourth prince, had suddenly taken ill and died. Today was the day of the funeral. The fourth prince was the emperor of the Eternal Dynasty's youngest son. The emperor had doted on the fourth prince, who was the son of his old age. He even ignored the ministers who felt that the fourth prince was too young to be made crown prince. He had insisted, and a month ago, the fourth prince was made the crown prince of the Eternal Dynasty. But no one had expected the fourth prince to die suddenly. The emperor was deeply grieved. The fourth prince's mother had cried until she was hoarse and exhausted. The other princes and princesses had arrived in the imperial city to participate in the funeral of their young brother. Fourth royal brother was pitiful. He was so young, why? Eldest royal sister, don't grieve too much, or you might make yourself ill and cause our royal father more worry. Ling Feng comforted her softly. The eldest princess, Ling Qiong, wiped her tears and nodded gently. There were no traces of tears in Ling Feng's eyes. He glanced around and said softly in Ling Qiong's ear, "The guests have arrived." A strange look flashed across Ling Qiong's eyes. Then, she began crying bitterly, as if she had not heard him. She cried so hard that she turned pale. Eldest royal sister. Eldest royal sister. When Ling Feng saw that Ling Qiong had cried herself into a faint, he scooped her up in shock and hurriedly sought medical attention. The ministers could not help but sigh when they saw the eldest princess cry so bitterly over the death of her brother. Only one person smiled coldly. That was a frosty-looking girl, who was extraordinarily beautiful and was enshrouded in an elegant air. She watched as the eldest prince and princess left. There was no amusement in her eyes, only coldness. Third royal brother, eldest royal sister loved our fourth royal brother so much. Her tears just now were truly heart-wrenching. The frosty-looking girl suddenly turned to look at a handsome man next to her. Ling Yan raised his eyes slightly and smiled at the frosty-looking girl, the second princess of the Eternal Dynasty, Ling Yu. Our eldest royal sister has always doted on her younger brothers and sisters. She must be heartbroken by what happened to the fourth prince. Ling Yu laughed softly. The chill in her smile deepened as she looked at Ling Yan's calm countenance. Third royal brother has always been intelligent. Of course you know the truth behind fourth royal brother's death. Our eldest royal brother and sister have always been on good terms. Didn't they invite third royal brother for a short stay a few days ago? Has third royal brother forgotten that? Ling Yan laughed softly, but he did not reply. He glanced at the disappearing figures of the eldest prince and princess from the corner of his eye. Amusement continued to linger in his eyes. "Miss Yi, we are about to meet soon." Chapter 1285, The Eternal Dynasty, 2. The eldest prince hurriedly carried the eldest princess away. However, after they left the palace and got into a sedan, the eldest princess suddenly recovered. She casually wiped the tear stains from her eyes and took out powder to repair her exquisitely made-up face, as if no one else was around. She also removed her mourning attire. "Eldest royal sister, your acting skills are truly admirable." The eldest prince laughed softly as he watched his younger sister swiftly change her appearance. The eldest princess glanced at the eldest prince and laughed. "Royal brother, is what you said true? The guests from the Temple of Shadows have arrived." "Naturally." The eldest prince nodded with a smile. The eldest princess nodded slightly. "That's good. Our royal father spoiled our fourth royal brother and made him crown prince over everyone's protests. He did not expect our fourth royal brother to be so unfortunate as to die after having been crowned prince for only a few months." The eldest prince laughed softly and said, "Our fourth royal brother was too young and needed more training. It was inappropriate for our royal father to allow him to become crown prince so early. Nonetheless, since fourth royal brother is already dead, we will say no more. However, our second royal sister has recently grown even closer to the Grand Advisor." "Humph." The eldest princess laughed coldly. "Second royal sister is too ambitious. The advisor is from the sacred ground of reflection. She thinks that by seeking support from the advisor, she will receive aid from the sacred ground of reflection. However, it won't be that easy for her to achieve her desires." A malicious look flashed across the eldest prince's eyes. After a while, the carriage stopped at the residence of the eldest prince. The eldest prince and princess alighted and went directly towards the main hall. 3 figures were already sitting in the main hall of the eldest prince's residence. The moment the eldest prince and princess saw the 3 figures seated in the main hall, they hurried over to greet them. "Honored guests from the Divine Temple, we are sorry to keep you waiting. Please excuse us." The eldest prince went forward with a smile and bowed apologetically. The eldest princess also bowed. Enchanting, who was sitting in the main hall, quietly observed the two people who were next in line to the throne of the Eternal Dynasty. On the way here, she had vaguely heard about them from Lady Ghost. The cooperation between the Temple of Shadows and the Eternal Dynasty was essentially selecting the most suitable prince to ascend the throne of the Eternal Dynasty. In this generation, the Temple of Shadows had chosen the eldest prince, Ling Feng. The Eternal Dynasty's emperor was getting old and infirm. In recent years, the position of crown prince had been vacant, with the various princes and princesses jockeying for the highest position. Not long ago, the emperor of the Eternal Dynasty had suddenly selected a crown prince. He had made his most beloved fourth prince the crown prince of the Eternal Dynasty. Guardian Lady Ghost, it has been a long time. How are you? The eldest princess greeted Lady Ghost. She had previously met Lady Ghost once and so knew who she was. She was also very happy to see Lady Ghost. Their chances of victory were slightly greater now that the Temple of Shadows had sent their guardian. Lady Ghost smiled and nodded. She introduced the eldest prince and princess. This is the holy son of the Temple of Shadows, Minggu. The eldest prince and princess were taken aback and bowed to Minggu. Greetings, holy son Minggu. So far, the most senior member of the Temple of Shadows that they had met was Lady Ghost, and they had only met her once. They had not expected even the Holy Sun to be dispatched. Chapter 1286, The Eternal Dynasty, 3. Minggu could not be bothered to make small talk with these two. His gaze remained fixed on Enchanting. When they saw that Minggu was ignoring them, the two of them naturally did not say anything else. And this is, the eldest prince's keen senses noted the direction of Minggu's gaze and noticed a beautiful young girl with a faint smile, who was sitting nearby. Lady Ghost's expression flickered, and she said, "This is Elder Yi from the Temple of Shadows. So you're an elder. Greetings, elder." The eldest prince and princess did not suspect anything and simply bowed. Before Enchanting entered the Eternal Dynasty, she had instructed Lady Ghost not to tell anyone that she was the Holy Lord. Lady Ghost had naturally followed her orders. "We have received the eldest prince's news. What is the situation now?" Lady Ghost said with a smile. Now that Enchanting was incognito, Minggu supposedly had the highest status. However, Minggu was unwilling to pay attention to anyone else, so Lady Ghost had no choice but to speak on his behalf. In reality, Enchanting had deliberately concealed her identity, both to hint to Lady Ghost that she wished to secretly observe the situation and also because she did not know about the cooperation between the Eternal Dynasty and the Temple of Shadows. She preferred this method to stumbling around and making mistakes. The eldest prince and princess grew more serious at the mention of business. They told Lady Ghost about the recent events in the Eternal Dynasty. They wished to seize the throne but needed the support of the Temple of Shadows. So naturally, they had nothing to hide. "What you are saying is that the fourth prince died yesterday and that the position of the crown prince is now vacant," said Lady Ghost. The eldest prince nodded. "That's right. But the fourth prince was very young, so he was no threat even after he became the crown prince. Rather, it is the second princess, Ling Yu, and the third prince, Ling Yan, who are harder to deal with." Enchanting's heart fluttered at the mention of Ling Yan's name, but she continued to maintain her composure. She secretly pricked up her ears. For many years, the second princess, Ling Yu, has been growing closer to the Grand Advisor of the Eternal Dynasty. In recent years, the Grand Advisor has supported Ling Yu's influence in many areas, said the eldest prince. Grand Advisor, Lady Ghost raised her brows slightly. "Is that the one from the sacred ground of reflection?" "That's right," said the eldest prince. The sacred ground of reflection was one of the major mysterious forces in Central Mainland. It had a rich heritage and was very involved in the various major dynasties. The advisors of all the major dynasties were sent from the sacred ground of reflection. On the surface, they assisted the emperors in governing the dynasties, but in reality, everyone knew better. The advisors from the sacred ground of reflection held important positions in every dynasty they were sent to. Even royalty like the eldest prince treated them with great deference whenever they met. The second prince's intentions were perfectly obvious when she had sought support from the advisor. And it was precisely because the second princess had obtained the support of the sacred ground of reflection that the eldest prince had hurriedly contacted the Temple of Shadows. He was afraid that the second princess would get ahead of them. Lady Ghost laughed softly but did not question further. She said, "And what about the third prince?" The moment she heard Ling Yan's name, Yi Qingtang listened even more intently. The eldest prince frowned. The third prince, Ling Yan, is not supported by any base of power. But he is more intelligent than others. He is known to have near demonic brilliance. He is very difficult to deal with, although he is acting alone. Chapter 1287, The Eldest Prince, 1. The eldest prince paused and continued. Before this, Ling Qiong and I planned to imprison him and thought that he would never see the light of day again. But, he unexpectedly escaped without a scratch. Yi Qingtang was speechless as she quietly listened to all this. These two wanted to trap Ling Yan. It was more likely that Ling Yan had willingly gone to prison, otherwise, they certainly could not have locked him into the dungeon. However, after hearing this, Yi Qingtang could not help but worry. Based on the current situation, it looked like the eldest prince and princess had already obtained the support of the Temple of Shadows while the second princess had the support of the sacred ground of reflection. Ling Yan, on the other hand, was fighting alone. Should she be applauding his ability or lamenting the fact that he had no allies? Yi Qingtang also understood the Temple of Shadows' plans. The Temple of Shadows was supporting the eldest prince, which meant they were opposing Ling Yan. It would be natural for Ling Yan to happily expose the false Holy Lord, who was on the opposing side. It's late. Please go and rest. We will discuss other things when all of you are rested. Although the eldest prince was anxious about the matter of the crown prince, he did not dare to delay Lady Ghost and the others. Lady Ghost nodded, and the servants led them, along with the others from the Temple of Shadows, away to rest. Yi Qingtang only relaxed after she returned to her room. The little white tiger, who had been cuddled in her arms, now jumped onto the chair and shook out its fluffy fur. This eldest prince and princess seem like a bad lot. They probably killed the fourth prince. The little white tiger flicked its ears. It might not be them. It might be the second princess. However, that's not important. Their motives are all the same. They will not allow anyone else to become the crown prince or get closer to the throne. Yi Qingtang sat nearby and rested her chin on her hand. In her previous life, she was exhausted from fleeing and had not come into much contact with the jostling and intrigues of the various major dynasties. However, the intensity of these did not pale in contrast to any battle. Do you trust Ling Yan that much? Why don't you just say that he did it? The little white tiger glanced at Yi Qingtang and asked naughtily. Yi Qingtang rolled her eyes at it. Do you think he is so stupid? Since someone will definitely do it on his behalf, he doesn't need to soil his hands. You really understand him very well, the little white tiger said meaningfully. Yi Qingtang ignored him. Little white tiger did not mind. It batted its eyes and suddenly jumped onto Yi Qingtang's knee and stared at her. Get down. Yi Qingtang frowned. This fellow was getting heavier, and her arms ached from carrying him. Do you think you will have to oppose Ling Yan, since you are here in the capacity of the Holy Lord of Shadows? The little white tiger sniggered. Since the Temple of Shadows was supporting the eldest prince, then any member of the royal family apart from him was the enemy. Enchanting remained silent. She picked the little white tiger by the scruff of his neck and flung him down. Before the little white tiger could get up, Enchanting's door suddenly opened. A furry little head peeped in through the crack. "Aw yow!" Mingus' big black eyes shone as he gazed at Enchanting. She had just begun to unwind, but now, she could not relax anymore. Chapter 1288, The Eldest Prince, 2. Although Enchanting was pretty fond of this little fellow, he was, after all, the holy son of the Temple of Shadows. He was nice to her only because he thought she was the holy lord of the Temple of Shadows. If her true identity were to be revealed, he would be the first to try to kill her. "Come in." Enchanting sighed inwardly but put on a smile to welcome Minggu. Minggu rushed in and threw himself into Enchanting's arms. "Aw yow, can I sleep with you over the next few days?" Minggu rubbed Enchanting's arm as he gazed at her with large, liquid eyes. "Minggu, you..." Enchanting tried to tactfully reject Minggu's attempt when someone suddenly knocked on the door. "Come in." The eldest prince appeared at the door with a few servants in tow. "Elder Yi, holy son, Minggu." The eldest prince spoke graciously with a smile. "Meeting you has been a rare opportunity, so I have prepared some presents." With that, the eldest prince lifted his chin slightly, and the servants that followed him humbly came forward. They placed a few brocade-wrapped boxes and a crystal bottle before Enchanting and Minggu. Minggu frowned slightly. He was clearly displeased that someone had interrupted his time alone with Enchanting. Enchanting's gaze swept over the presents on the table. All the items were exquisitely wrapped, but Enchanting could smell the faint scent of blood. The crystal bottle in particular gave off the strongest scent of blood. The transparent crystal bottle held some liquid that was crimson, like fresh blood, although a shade darker. "I happened to learn of some of Holy Son Minggu's hobbies. It was hastily prepared today. I hope Holy Son Minggu will graciously accept it, even if it is somewhat lacking." The eldest prince smiled, and his gaze fell on the crystal bottle filled with the dark red liquid. "This is blood essence, distilled from the blood of 100 young girls who just turned 16 years old. I hope the Holy Son, Minggu, will enjoy it." Since the eldest prince was cooperating with the Temple of Shadows, he had secretly investigated the tastes of the senior members of the Temple of Shadows. In the course of this, he learned that the Holy Son, Minggu, was a mutant undead and liked fresh blood, so he had made preparations. After hearing the eldest prince's words, Mingu's unhappy look diminished a little. His gaze passed over the blood essence in the bottle, but he did not immediately reach out for it. He only subconsciously glanced at Enchanting. Yao did not like him to be too brutal. Enchanting received a jolt when she saw the bottle of blood essence. She had heard of blood essence before. The blood needed to be extracted while the person was still alive. The fresh blood was slowly drained drop by drop, to the last drop. Furthermore, blood essence of the highest quality had strict requirements for the person whose blood was being extracted. After the fresh blood was distilled, it could only be kept for a very short period of time. After 2 days, the purity of the blood essence would deteriorate, and the color would fade. But the bottle of blood essence gifted by the eldest prince had such a deep color that it was apparent that it had been freshly extracted. They had only been here for half a day, but the eldest prince had already distilled this bottle of blood essence. Enchanting could almost imagine the eldest prince immediately ordering someone to prepare it after he had met them. 100 young girls had been instantly and casually murdered, just to provide the eldest prince with a present. Chapter 1289, The Eldest Prince, 3. Enchanting had heard of the eldest prince of the Eternal Dynasty in her previous life and knew that he was a cruel and savage master. Minggu saw that Enchanting did not intend him to take it, so he said to the eldest prince, "No need." With that, Minggu even batted his eyes at Enchanting, as if begging for approval. The eldest prince did not mind. He just smiled and said, "Perhaps the holy son Minggu does not like the present I prepared. However, there is still one more thing." The eldest prince paused and said, "My royal father has learned that envoys from the Temple of Shadows have arrived. He is holding a banquet in the palace. I hope you will attend." Enchanting nodded slightly. The eldest prince did not say anything else and led the rest away. Shortly after leaving the room, the smile on the eldest prince's face slowly faded. Not far away, the eldest princess who had been waiting for a long time saw the eldest prince and walked over. "Eldest royal brother, how were the presents received?" The eldest prince shook his head calmly. "Tonight, our royal father is holding a banquet to host the guests from the Temple of Shadows. I assume that Ling Yan and Ling Yu will attend. You should make your preparations then." The eldest prince looked meaningfully at the eldest princess. The eldest princess immediately understood. "I understand." The two of them conversed for a while and then left. When the sun set, the carriages prepared by the eldest prince brought the group from the Temple of Shadows to the palace. Under the moonlight, the royal palace of the Eternal Dynasty was ablaze with light. The white cloth that hung there during the day had been quietly removed. The huge palace was completely silent. There was only the occasional footstep from a patrolling guardsman or the sound of an insect. The aged Eternal Emperor was already seated in the main hall, at the place of honor. His craggy face showed faint signs of weariness. "Royal father, don't grieve too much. Just take care of yourself." If fourth royal brother knew, he would feel guilty and uneasy. The eldest princess who had arrived earlier looked worriedly at the weary Eternal Emperor and spoke with concern. The Eternal Emperor sighed softly, and a faint frown appeared. "Miaoer died suddenly, and concubine Jade is lying heartbroken on her sickbed." The Miaoer that the Eternal Emperor was referring to was the fourth prince, Ling Miao, who had died. Concubine Jade was his birth mother and also the Emperor's favorite concubine. "Your Majesty, although you are grieved, you must have a thought for your own health." A minister at the banquet rose to console him. Today, the Eternal Emperor was holding a banquet to entertain the guests from the Temple of Shadows. Besides the princes and princesses, some of the senior ministers of the dynasty had also been invited to the banquet. The Eternal Emperor had been unwell in recent times. Everyone had already been feeling depressed, but then the recently crowned crown prince had died suddenly, making things worse. The second princess, Ling Yu, was seated at the banquet. Her lips involuntarily curved into a cold smile when she saw the eldest prince's concern for the emperor. From the corner of her eye, she glanced at Ling Yan, who was sitting by himself. She realized that Ling Yan was just sitting there with a faint smile. He occasionally took a sip from his cup but had no intention of speaking. "Third royal brother is in a good mood," said Ling Yu. Ling Yan smiled and lifted his eyes to look at Ling Yu. "Grief will not undo enmity. Our fourth royal brother would not wish his affairs to worry others. Am I right?" Ling Yu laughed coldly. "Third royal brother is truly brilliant. But today's banquet is not to mourn our fourth royal brother. Ambassadors from the Temple of Shadows arrived today. Third royal brother, with your intelligence, can't you see the motive behind this?" Chapter 1290, The Eternal Royal Family, 1. Ling Yan smiled but did not reply. Ling Yu continued. "Eldest royal brother has always been on good terms with the Temple of Shadows. I'm afraid eldest royal brother is the one in the best mood today." Ling Yu knew about the cooperation between the eldest prince and the Temple of Shadows and also that the eldest prince had designs on the throne. He was also allied with the eldest princess and was a truly formidable opponent. The third prince spent some time in prison. Did you get used to it? Ling Yu sneered. It was all right, Ling Yan said with a smile. Ling Yu's expression grew chillier. She was just about to say something else when she suddenly heard someone report that the eldest prince had arrived with ambassadors from the Temple of Shadows. Everyone in the main hall, including the Eternal Emperor, immediately turned sober. Everyone's gaze turned towards the entrance of the main hall. Only Ling Yan continued to smile faintly as he held his cup. The amusement showed even in his eyes. A moment later, the eldest prince, Lady Ghost, and the others entered the main hall. Royal Father, your son greets you. The eldest prince bowed to the Eternal Emperor. Arise. The Eternal Emperor laughed softly, and his gaze turned to Lady Ghost and the other two standing next to the eldest prince. We are honored today by a visit by our guests from the Temple of Shadows. You must be tired from your journey. Please take a seat. The Eternal Emperor spoke with a smile. In the main hall, everyone's gaze converged on Enchanting, Lady Ghost, and Minggu. Enchanting looked at ease. She smiled as she sat down with Minggu. At the moment, her status was not that of the Holy Lord of Shadows but an elder from the Temple of Shadows. Therefore, there was no need for her to speak. The moment she sat down, Enchanting suddenly realized that she was sitting opposite Ling Yan. Ever since she last bade farewell to Ling Yan, she had not seen him for a long time. Today, Ling Yan was dressed simply, but it could not conceal his air of elegance. Just as Enchanting was secretly studying Ling Yan lifted his head and smiled politely at Enchanting. Then, he glanced away, as if he did not recognize her. Enchanting was speechless. The Temple of Shadows is some distance from the Eternal Dynasty. It is a rare opportunity for you to visit us. We are truly honored to have you as our guests, and we wish to welcome you today. The Eternal Emperor smiled and raised his cup. Everyone also raised their cups and drained them. This scene caused a smile to appear in the eyes of the eldest prince and princess. Enchanting coolly sat in her seat, but her eyes discreetly swept across everyone present. She had not had much contact with the royal family of the Eternal Dynasty in her previous life, so she had not met most of them. But based on what she understood, the frosty-looking girl sitting next to Ling Yan must be the second princess of the Eternal Dynasty, Ling Yu. Before she reached the palace, Enchanting already vaguely understood that there were three centers of power among the royal family of the Eternal Dynasty. The eldest prince and princess were allied in trying to seize the throne, and they were backed by the power of the Temple of Shadows. The second princess, Ling Yu, was working together with the advisor from the sacred ground of reflection. Only Ling Yan was fighting alone. The three centers of power opposed each other. Why isn't the advisor here yet? The Eternal Emperor asked as his gaze swept across the main hall. The second princess, Ling Yu, immediately stood and said, "Royal Father, the advisor had some matters to attend to and will come later." The Eternal Emperor nodded slightly and did not say anything. The second princess sat down but looked straight at the eldest prince with a challenging expression. Although the eldest prince had the support of the Temple of Shadows, she had the support of the sacred ground of reflection. Chapter 1291, The Eternal Royal Family, 2. A look of cold amusement flashed across the eldest prince's eyes. He had no friendly feelings for this younger sister who was always vying with him for the throne. The eldest prince could not help but be somewhat worried when the second princess had sought the support of the advisor. In recent years, the Eternal Emperor's health had declined steadily, and the fight for the throne had become more intense. Although the eldest prince knew that the Temple of Shadows had chosen him, he had yet to see the Temple of Shadows make a move. He could not help but worry, so he had invited the ambassadors from the Temple of Shadows to provide added security. When he thought of that, the eldest prince's gaze involuntarily fell on Ling Yan, who had yet to speak. The truth was, he was more worried about this third royal brother than the second princess. Everyone was aware of Ling Yan's brilliance. However, Ling Yan had not appeared to ally himself with any other power. As a result, the eldest prince had not taken him seriously before, although he had tried various schemes to get rid of him. However, Ling Yan had escaped unscathed from these schemes. This had caused the eldest prince to be even warier of Ling Yan's ability and intelligence. However, now that the ambassadors from the Temple of Shadows had arrived, he felt even surer of seizing the throne. Although Ling Yan was brilliant, it would be extremely difficult for him to oppose the Temple of Shadows and the sacred ground of reflection. On the surface, the banquet was a picture of harmony. But fierce currents lurked beneath the surface. The Eternal Emperor looked at the three ambassadors from the Temple of Shadows. He had met Lady Ghost before, but the other two were unfamiliar. Some matters have arisen within the dynasty recently. If we are remiss in anything, I hope the ambassadors from the temple will forgive us. Lady Ghost smiled and said, before we arrived, the eldest prince already told us that the fourth prince recently passed away. The emperor must be deeply grieved. The Eternal Emperor could not help but sigh softly at the mention of the fourth prince. I am already old, and it is time to consider the matter of succession. Miao was unfortunate to die at such a young age. This had brought me much grief. The Eternal Emperor's passing comment caused all the princes, princesses, and senior ministers present to prick up their ears. Although Miao is dead, the Eternal Dynasty needs a new crown prince to reassure the people. I do not have many children, and they are all seated here today. As the Eternal Emperor spoke, his loving gaze swept across his sons and daughters who were seated at the banquet. The Eternal Emperor seemed to be hinting at something. At that moment, the eldest prince and princess were the most agitated. Today's banquet was to entertain the guests from the Temple of Shadows, but the Eternal Emperor had brought up the matter of succession. Was he hinting at something? The eldest prince felt assured of victory, whether in terms of timing, location, or support. An expectant look involuntarily surfaced in his eyes. Rather, it was the second princess who looked rather pale. She had already arrived at the same conclusion as the eldest prince. At that moment, she could not conceal her inner unease. She kept glancing out of the hall. After a while, a look of joy suddenly surfaced in her eyes. Your Majesty worries too much. Your Majesty is still hale. There is no need to make hasty decisions regarding the succession. A casual voice suddenly rang out from outside the entrance of the main hall. Everyone looked over and saw a white-robed old man with white hair slowly walk through the door of the main hall. This old man had a suave and otherworldly air. Advisor, you're late. The Eternal Emperor looked up and said with a smile. Chapter 1292, The Eternal Royal Family, 3. The old man smiled and strode into the main hall. He glanced discreetly at Yi Qingtang and the other ambassadors from the Temple of Shadows who were seated. A moment later, he bowed shallowly to the Eternal Emperor and said, I had some matters to attend to and was delayed. No matter. Advisor, please take your place. The Eternal Emperor smiled. The advisor nodded and sat somewhere near the second princess. The moment the second princess saw the advisor, she seemed to regain her inner strength. The trace of unease in her eyes vanished. Instead, the delight in the eldest prince's and princess' eyes faded. The Eternal Emperor had just hinted that he would make the eldest prince the crown prince. They had thought that they could seize the opportunity to become the crown prince, but the advisor had suddenly arrived and interrupted the Eternal Emperor. The advisor was from the sacred ground of reflection, which was extremely prestigious. Within the Eternal Dynasty, no one dared to be rude to him. It was as if he had almost managed to taste a delectable piece of meat, but something had intervened. The eldest prince was now in a foul mood. "Your Majesty, the fourth prince has recently passed away. Your Majesty's health has improved. There is no hurry to settle the matter of succession." The advisor looked at the emperor as he spoke with an otherworldly air. The Eternal Emperor sighed softly and said, "That may be so, but I have already made up my mind regarding the succession. Today, the ambassadors from the Temple of Shadows and the advisor are all here, and we might as well consider the matter together with me." The Eternal Emperor's words caused the hearts of all the princes and princesses present to flutter. They had thought that today's banquet was to entertain the ambassadors from the Temple of Shadows. But now it seemed that the Eternal Emperor was going to decide the next crown prince at the banquet. The situation in the main hall immediately turned delicate. Enchanting secretly observed the reactions of everyone in the hall. The second princess and the eldest prince were the most intent on seizing the throne. Even though they deliberately suppressed their feelings, they were unable to completely conceal them. Ling Yan, on the other hand, had yet to speak. He continued to smile faintly as if the matter at hand had nothing to do with him. Enchanting inwardly applauded Ling Yan's good mood. Even to an outsider like her, it was apparent that none of his siblings were easy to deal with. No matter who became the next emperor of the Eternal Dynasty, the first person on their hit list would be Ling Yan, with his almost demonic intelligence. After all, such a brilliant brother near the throne would cause them unease. As if he sensed Enchanting's gaze, Ling Yan raised his eyes and met Enchanting's eyes when no one was looking. He smiled, showing a teasing look in his eyes. Enchanting was speechless. She should not worry about this fellow. The Eternal Emperor laughed softly and did not mention the matter of succession again. He only raised his cup and toasted Lady Ghost, Enchanting, and the other ambassadors. Amidst the music and dancing, the Eternal Emperor smiled and said, "Yenner, I happen to have good news for you." The Eternal Emperor's words immediately gave the eldest prince and second princess a jolt. They involuntarily glanced at Ling Yan. Ling Yan said, "Royal Father, what might that good news be?" The Eternal Emperor said with a smile, "The girl from the Mo family has recently returned. I have summoned her here today. You have been engaged since young, but she was always cultivating with her master elsewhere. Both of you have had few opportunities to meet. Today's banquet is a good opportunity for you to reunite." Chapter 1293, Engagement 1, Engagement. When Enchanting heard the Eternal Emperor's words, her heart somehow skipped a beat. A strange feeling suddenly arose in her heart, and she involuntarily looked at Ling Yan. Only to see Ling Yan smile at the Emperor. The Emperor gestured, and a moment later, a tall, extremely beautiful girl walked slowly into the hall from a side room. The girl was exquisite looking, and under the lamplight, her delicate skin looked especially flawless. Elder Brother Yan. The girl looked straight at the handsome Ling Yan, her eyes filled with emotion. Enchanting involuntarily looked at the girl and received a mild shock. Mo Yunxian. Enchanting had met this girl in her previous life. Mo Yunxian was the daughter of General Mo of the Eternal Dynasty. General Mo was one of the top generals in the Eternal Dynasty. He commanded 1,000,000 valiant troops and was one of the Eternal Emperor's most favored subordinates. Mo Yunxian was extremely beautiful. In fact, she was known to be the most beautiful woman in the Eternal Dynasty. Mo Yunxian was also incredibly confident of her looks. In her previous life, Enchanting had met Mo Yunxian once in the Central Mainland Academy. At that time, Enchanting had regained her looks, and her great beauty had irritated Mo Yunxian. Mo Yunxian had ordered someone to destroy Enchanting's looks. Fortunately, Enchanting had fled in time to avoid Enchanting's destruction. But it turned out that Enchanting and Enchanting would meet again in this life, under completely different circumstances. What was even more surprising was that Enchanting is actually Ling Yan's fiancé. She had not even known that Ling Yan had a fiancé. But then, she realized. Ling Yan had no need to report to her. For some reason, Enchanting felt as if she was choking. She subconsciously swallowed some wine to try to remove this feeling. Ah Yao, no need to force yourself to eat these things. I'll find some black flame worms for you later. Minggu watched as Enchanting gulped her wine and looked at her rather worriedly. Enchanting's gut wrenched at the mention of black flame worms. The choking feeling in her heart instantly vanished. I'm alright. Enchanting smiled at Minggu. She secretly broke out in a cold sweat. No matter what she thought, Lady Ghost was still next to her. Fortunately, Lady Ghost had not noticed anything. If not, she would have given the game away. She could barely save herself now, so she had no time for wild thoughts. Enchanting immediately cleared her mind of these messy emotions and prepared to look on with composure. So what if she is his fiancée? While Enchanting's emotions were running amok, Enchanting had walked over to Ling Yan and gently sat down next to him. Ling Yan looked at his fiancée but continued to secretly observe Enchanting's every move from the corner of his eye. When he saw Enchanting gulp down her wine, an amused look involuntarily surfaced in his eyes. But the amusement was too deeply hidden, and no one noticed it. When the eldest prince and second princess saw that the Eternal Emperor's good news referred to Enchanting's return, they relaxed. After all, both the advisor and the ambassadors from the Temple of Shadows were present today. Ling Yan certainly would not be made crown prince. Chapter 1294, Engagement, 2, Elder Brother Yen, I have already completed my studies and will remain in the capital for now. In the future, we can see each other every day. Enchanting only had eyes for Ling Yan. Ling Yan did not say anything. He only smiled. Why are you smiling? Do you think you look good when you smile? Stupid fox. Enchanting muttered to herself. The Eternal Emperor was all smiles when he saw the intimacy between Enchanting and Ling Yan. Yenner, you and Enchanting have known each other for a long time and have been engaged for many years. You are no longer young and should be considering your marriage, the Eternal Emperor said with a smile. Enchanting's eyes were filled with anticipation. Ling Yan smiled and said, there must be order in the family. My older royal brothers and sisters have not yet married, so I am not in a hurry either. The Eternal Emperor only smiled and shook his head. There is no need for such considerations. You are younger, but if you became the crown prince, then your birth order would not matter. Everyone's expression changed at the Eternal Emperor's casual words. What's going on? What does our royal father mean? The eldest princess was startled and involuntarily whispered to the eldest prince. The eldest prince also looked shocked, but he quickly steadied himself. Perhaps it is only a joke. Let's see what our royal father says next. The eldest princess frowned slightly but also calmed down. The second prince's composure showed signs of cracking. Her gaze swept over Ling Yan, and her eyes grew sharp. But the Eternal Emperor seemed to be completely unconscious of the undercurrents. He said, it is best to have two joyous occasions together. Yenner, you are the most intelligent of my children, and I have great expectations of you. So I have decided that from tomorrow onward, you will be the crown prince of the Eternal Dynasty. The Eternal Emperor's words shocked everyone. No one would have thought that the Eternal Emperor would make Ling Yan the crown prince at today's banquet. Royal Father, thank you for your favor. I will certainly not disappoint you. I will do my utmost to shoulder my duties as a crown prince. Ling Yan smiled and seemed completely unsurprised by this outcome. It was as if he had anticipated everything. He slowly rose and went forward to make his obeisance to the Eternal Emperor. At that moment, the eldest prince could no longer maintain his mild expression. He glared at Ling Yan with a vicious look in his eyes. The second princess grew even chillier, as if her gaze was frozen. The entire atmosphere in the main hall grew strange. However, many senior ministers nodded. They also favored the third prince, Ling Yan. After all, there was almost no one who could compare to Ling Yan in terms of intelligence. With such capability and intelligence, he was the best choice for heir. How could it be him? The elder princess twisted the corner of her robe until it almost tore. She ground her teeth as she glared at Ling Yan. She regretted not killing Ling Yan when he was in the dungeon. This development was completely unexpected. Today, both the eldest prince and the second princess felt that they were the likeliest ones to seize the throne. Who knew, Ling Yan had gotten ahead of them. This is the golden seal of the crown prince. Keep it carefully. Your fourth royal brother departed recently, and I have no wish to involve too many people. You only need to know that from the moment you receive this golden seal, you are the heir of the eternal dynasty. The Eternal Emperor personally handed the golden seal to Ling Yan. He beamed as he looked at this incredibly brilliant son. Chapter 1295, Engagement, 3, Yes. Ling Yan took the golden seal and kept it carefully. When the second princess and the eldest prince saw Ling Yan take the seal, their eyes almost fell out of their heads. Enchanting sat there, watching everyone's reaction. One might say that from the moment Ling Yan accepted the crown prince's golden seal, he became the #1 target on the second princess and the eldest prince's blacklist. The two of them were definitely involved in the fourth prince's death. Now, Ling Yan had become the target, bringing with it another wave of events. Enchanting herself had not expected to witness the moment Ling Yan became the crown prince. Congratulations, third royal brother. The eldest prince suddenly suppressed his emotions and raised his cup. Ha! I got it wrong. From now on, I must refer to you as the crown prince. Crown Prince, all your siblings are happy that you will share our royal father's burdens in the future. Eldest royal brother is too polite. Ling Yan smiled. He took the cup offered by a passing servant and toasted the eldest prince. The crown prince has always been intelligent. Our royal father is a wonderful judge of character. I believe that our eternal dynasty will prosper from now on. Hey, race to you. The eldest princess arose and toasted him with a smile. Only the second princess looked icy. But the advisor secretly glanced at her, and she took a deep breath and arose, carrying a natural smile on her face. Congratulations, Crown Prince. Ling Yan did not turn down any toasts, returning every compliment. Mo Yongxian's face was filled with joy. She arose with a cup and slowly went over to Ling Yan. Elder brother Yan, in the future, I must call you elder brother Crown Prince. Allow Yunxian to salute you. Mo Yunxian looked at Ling Yan with glowing eyes. Ling Yan nodded slightly and drained his cup. Lady Ghost, who was sitting nearby, saw it all. She secretly glanced at Enchanting from the corner of her eye and saw that she was smiling faintly. Lady Ghost arose and walked towards Ling Yan. We did not expect such a joyous occasion on our visit. I am Lady Ghost. May I salute the Crown Prince? When Mo Yunxian looked at the enchantingly beautiful Lady Ghost, a look of displeasure flashed across her eyes. Thank you, Guardian. Ling Yan responded with a smile. Lady Ghost was not shocked and Ling Yan called her Guardian. After all, with Ling Yan's reputation for intelligence, it was no surprise that he knew who she was. When Enchanting, who was sitting far away, saw this, she also arose with her cup. Her status was that of an elder of the Temple of Shadows. If the guardian, Lady Ghost, had already presented her congratulations, then she too needed to make a gesture. However, Enchanting only smiled and raised her cup to Ling Yan and did not speak. She did not need to say anything in her capacity as Holy Lord of Shadows. Even a fake elder did not need to speak. Furthermore, for some reason, she did not feel like talking to Ling Yan right now, so she saved herself the trouble. Ling Yan looked at Enchanting raising her cup. Amusement flashed across his eyes, and he drained his cup. Instead, it was Mo Yunxian who was standing nearby who looked surprised when she saw Enchanting's appearance. Mo Yunxian was proud of her beauty, and few could compare with her. She was even confident that she could rival Lady Ghost. But the moment Enchanting appeared, Mo Yunxian received a jolt. Could anyone on earth look so beautiful? When she saw Enchanting toast Ling Yan and the hint of a smile on Ling Yan's lips, Mo Yunxian felt as if someone had stabbed her in her heart. She suddenly grew stern and suddenly spoke to Enchanting. "Who are you? You didn't even say a word to the Crown Prince. That's so rude." You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.